Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Adrien Beyk, the founder and CEO of Quanta Vici. I think I got all that right, did I, Adrien?
Yeah, it's all right.
Well, we're glad to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us. And
Thank you for having me.
and could you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
For sure, for sure. Uh, my father is an engineer, so growing up, I was always introduced to LEDs and how cool science is and all that. And I've always had this kind of mix of love for creativity and also for making things that help people in their real life. So naturally, I started with programming. I started programming at a very young age, and because I like to put things in a package that works for people, I created a image editing software suite that I launched. This is back when I was 15 years old, and it it got a bit of attention. It got a few million downloads back in the day, and it was satisfying to see an idea coming to reality by just coding. But I wanted to do things more professionally, so I got my degree in engineering at Ryerson University here in Toronto. And from there, I started working with different tech startups. And the reason I chose to work with tech startups as opposed to working at a big company that's established is that, as I said, I really like creativity. I really like to be able to focus on the whole project rather than just a feature. So I saw that working with startups, they would allow me to have more involvement on the bigger picture of things. And that's exactly what happened. I was lucky enough to take the role of lead engineer, getting to senior level of engineering and managing full cycles of different projects from ideation to launch, working with very talented individuals who brought years of experience in sales, in B2B, in B2C. And, it really got me ready for the real thing. And that's Quanta Vici. Quanta Vici began 4 years ago. And since then, I've just been working on that.
Oh, very interesting. And I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, you're both the CEO, the founder, and the lead engineer, right?
Basically, yeah.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah. I'm also the janitor here. Yeah.
So whatever needs to be done. Well, that's a true entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
So what has been your experience with remote employment? Both, I don't know, as an employee and both as now an employer?
That's a very good point. I've been on both sides, employee and also employer. When you're an employee, the perspective is that you're kind of thinking about things like, is my boss aware of how much effort I'm putting into my work? Because you can go, there can be radio silence for days, and you're just like putting in, like, if you're a programmer, it's just like lines of code. If you're a designer, like iterations. But no one's there to see how much time and effort you're putting into your work. So it's always that worry. And there's also the issue of being left out of some decisions. For example, there's been cases where me or some of my colleagues, they got together, they had to talk about some feature, and I see something coming in, I'm like, well, what's that? And turns out I was left out of that conversation, not on purpose. It's just that challenges of working remotely. And then from the employer perspective, employers have their own worries too, and I understand that. I understood them back then, and I understand myself now that I manage a team. You're also worried if the employee is working. People have integrity. It rarely happens that someone takes advantage, but at the same time, even if they're not taking advantage, even if it's not something negative, you're worried if they are just on track, if they need anything. You know, some projects can be complex. You can leave for a couple of days and come back and see, oh, there was a misunderstanding. So they end up with something completely different. And, you know, all of the things I just mentioned, this has been my realization. This all comes down to communication. You know, if communication is done right, a lot of problems can be avoided. A lot of the times communication is done right and there's still issues. But, you know, in my case, working as an employee or an employer, the best way to avoid issues and help with communication is to, if you're an employee, report your progress, you know, be like, hey, I just finished this first iteration. What do you think about it? Give me some feedback, you know, it always helps. And if you're an employer, then do the same thing. Be like, hey, let's do the status of it. How are things going? Do you need any help? And it, you know, company culture has a lot to do with it, whether you want to, you know, different companies have different ways of dealing with things. Some of them act like a sport team, some of them act like a family, some of them it's like a military, you know. So it really depends on how you want to handle things. But it all comes down to, as a manager, being there and understanding what's needed, perfectly communicating that, and keeping track. And as an employee, same thing. Just
I agree. Communication is the key, and not just in business, but also in life. Because it applies to all aspects of life.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Right? But I think business is a little different because of you get egos involved and all that stuff, and it's a different dynamic than, you know.
Remote office politics.
Yes, yeah, as opposed to just office politics. Or those are two different things, as you probably know.
It's more difficult. Yeah.
Yes. So, what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
You know, in my experience, remote employment, so the way we started out was that remote employment was the only way to go about things, because, you know, having a pre-revenue startup, you don't want to hire someone full-time. That's, you know, whether you are experienced in handling a full-time employee or not, you may not have the funds, you know, you don't have the time, you don't have the funds. So what you want to do instead of that is find freelancers. Now, freelancers, you know, that's a very general term, but the way I like to look at it is that the future of employment as a whole, I think, is going to be, we're going towards a skill-based career model. I think that it's going to be more focused on skills. And when you're going after skills, then naturally you're going to work with people remotely, because it doesn't make sense for someone to be in your office for a week and then another office for another week. So, you know, I see a lot of benefits to it. You know, you have more options. Things are skill-based, and yeah.
I agree. Well, and it's interesting because that kind of leads us into the next thing, because I know your product. I've seen your website. So why don't you tell people what your product is, who your target market is, and all that? Then we can have some other, because you have very specific skills that you need for your product. So what is your product, and who do you sell to, and all those things?
Sure. So, you know what? I'm going to start with how this whole thing started and tell you the story.
Sure.
4 years ago, we were looking for truly viable personal heating solution. Now, it sounds like a big word, but really we wanted to have a heated wearable that works flawless, that works perfectly, and that's practical for people to use. And at the time when we were starting out, our goal was to meet a medical level of standards, not to just have something that's bulky, something that, for example, if you have arthritis and your joints lock up because of cold temperature, or whether you have diabetes and there's a poor blood circulation and you need heat, in all cases, this heat and the way the wearable is designed, it would all work together flawlessly to give you the experience you really need. So starting out with this medical level of standard expectation, um, the bar was set very high, you know.
Mhm.
So we looked at heated wearables that were on the market at the time, and we found a very clear data. You know, the voice of customers was very ratings and high sales.
Mhm.
That really means that there is a huge demand for this type of product, but it's not doing it for them.
Mhm.
So, you know, we took our research a step further. We started making prototypes. We analyzed all of the products on the market. We bought them, we tore them apart, we tested them in different conditions, and we got to this beautiful conclusion that, you know, if you want to have that viable personal heating solution, very big words, but that's the best way I found to describe this. You need to tackle a few things. For example, battery life,
Mhm.
thickness of the wearable. It has to be lightweight. You know, you don't want to have something on your hands that's bulky. And the other thing is, of course, quality, design, material, all of that is the foundation of it. But the other thing is temperature regulation. So you don't want to have just low, medium, high. You know, it doesn't really make sense. I always say, imagine if your home thermostat was just low, medium, high. You know, it would be a nightmare. You would have to just keep running it to turn it on and off all night. So, you know, getting this understanding, what we did was that we are not going to do anything unless we make the most perfect solution. You know, we don't want to be another white label on the market. You know, no way.
Mhm.
So let's do this. Let's not do the same thing where startups have a proof of traction and then they start investing their time and money. We went into the research and development phase. We realized that if we want to make this level of achievement possible, then we have to make it smart, because only a smart product would be able to sense the temperature and regulate heat to maintain what you said, have an app for these features, have a more efficient battery life, and therefore be more thin for mobility and so on and so on. So in 2018, we finished the research and development phase, which was a big deal. It proved to us that this is doable. We can really take things to the next level. And long story short, um, October 27th is our launch date for our Kickstarter campaign. We are ready for production. We are going to be delivering as early as December. And our products have a battery life of over 6.5 hours on a single charge. We offer USB-C charging, so it's very convenient. And as you can see on our website, quantavici.com, our products are designed by some really talented fashion designers.
Yeah,
They're
they are.
thin, and the material is absolutely top notch. We really chose the best for every aspect of the product.
So, and I have a couple questions about your product, if you don't mind. Like, let's just take your gloves, because that's an obvious thing that we'll show to the public.
Yeah.
So, if let's just say Toronto, every now and then it gets cold in Toronto, right? Would you wear just your gloves and you don't have to put gloves over them? Because the current stuff, you have to put a pair of gloves over them. Yours is
That's
just
a
a
great question. That's a
very,
great question. Yeah.
very slight pair of gloves that will keep you warm.
Exactly. So, as I said, you are able to set the exact temperature you want to have on your wearable, and it regulates heat to maintain that temperature you choose. And the cap for that, all of the heated wearables that are super bulky, usually targeting audiences for consumers for sports, skiing, extreme sports. But because we want to target the daily life consumers, people who just want to go about their regular life,
Mhm.
we've made them thin, and they also heat up as high as 130 Fahrenheit, so 50 Celsius, 55 Celsius.
Wow.
Yeah, so you don't need to have anything extra. You just put them on, and you're able to do um, anything.
Interesting. And then I wonder too, if you down the road, if you're looking at instead of wearables, just like thin blankets, right? Things like that. Because you have a 6.5 hour life, right? And at night you don't need as much heat. Is that something you're looking at down the road? Those types of products.
That's a great point. You know, That 6.5 hours that I mentioned, it's actually on the highest setting. So because we have this smart, our proprietary smart system that manages heat, it's allowed us to hold that high temperature for such a long duration. We have a cool video on YouTube that we used two competitor gloves, if you can even call it competition, burn, with a heat camera, and we are showing over time, it's a time lapse showing how over time it's able to maintain the exact temperature you set. And as for the next styles we will be supporting, our company was born with a strong mission statement. We have plans for many years to come. You know, fashionable wearables like leggings that has to look thin and beautiful. Those are things that we are thinking about next. I'll try not to spoil too much today, but that's the type of stuff we're going to go for. And also on for example, regular day on a medium temperature setting that you choose, the battery can last way more than 6.5 hours.
Wow, so cool. It sounds like you've engineered a very interesting product, and I've lived in that part of the world. I could tell you it would come in handy. Right? It might make it easier to live there because, as you know, -10 is -10. I don't care.
Yeah,
It's cold.
yeah.
So, well, so how did you incorporate the idea of remote at your company? I mean, you've been in business for 4 years now. Did you start out as with an office and then go to remote, or have you always been remote?
So yeah, that's very interesting because we started off as a small startup, no investors. We just wanted to do everything in house, and maybe not always, but most of the times, if the founder is hands-on and really focusing on the main problem, that has better results than to just like outsource the whole thing. So we took that approach. We want to do everything in house. For for a few things, for example, software development, some design work, we needed to hire people. And the only thing that worked for us because of our budget was taking that skill-based career model. So going for freelancers. And we really started off with remote talents in different parts of the world, Germany, Ukraine, US, anywhere.
Interesting. So, and that was one of the things I was trying to bring up earlier is that, I mean, you first of all, you have a clothing product, so you have to have design people, people that design clothes, right?
Exactly.
And you've got an electrical product, so you have to have electrical engineers,
Yeah.
right? And they have to work together to some degree, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
And are they in different parts of the world?
Um, yeah.
They're not in Toronto?
No, they're part of our fashion team is in Toronto. Most of our engineers are in Toronto, but for example, for things like manufacturing, some other type of design work, you need some specific type of skill that is harder to come by locally.
Very interesting. I would think that, I mean, Toronto's a big city. I would think a lot of that's there, but maybe not the best people for the job, right?
You know, for a lot of things, for example, I have over the years that I've worked with different companies or for myself to handle projects, I've come by some methods for finding the right person for the job. And the way I do it is I just go by whoever has the most relevant experience, the best, most relevant experience. And we have some really talented people in every city. It's amazing that I was surprised to see that, for example, I'm trying to not give away parts of our IP, but
Right.
for example, for our embedded development, we are using certain technology that is very new and it's being used by medical companies. It has the latest technology, and I was surprised to find professionals who offer that service locally. And yeah, it's good to have the option of global and
Yeah.
local. It hasn't been a big challenge.
Really? Well, that's cool. And that brings me to the next question, which, the pandemic made everybody go remote back in March, right? Did that cause any roadblocks or challenges that you weren't quite ready for or didn't expect, or was it pretty much business as usual for you? It seems like it wouldn't have had a big effect on you.
Yeah, I was really worried that how this would all play out for Quanta Vici, but it didn't affect anything other than that. For example, as you said, it's really difficult working on a project that has hardware, software, and fashion.
Mhm.
It's really crazy, and it's the type of fashion that you're putting on your body, so it has to be safe.
Mhm.
And you know, one of the things that became difficult for us early on was testing hardware. Unlike software, for hardware, I can't just hook up the remote desktop to the fashion designer and be like, hey, fill the texture on this. We don't have that technology yet. So we had to wait for shipments, shipping stuff. That caused some difficulty, but in other ways, no, not really.
Well, and I think one of the things that helped, correct me if I'm wrong, is you were pre-release, so you don't have customers yet, which adds a different level of complexity to any company.
Yeah, yeah. When this all happened, we were in our soft launch phase, so we just made a small announcement. Um, Even that wasn't affected um, that bad because it's really e-commerce, digital marketing. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Very interesting. Well, Adrien, I want to thank you for your time today. I think having lived in that area of the world, I know what winners are like. So I think you're coming out with the right product at the right time. And I have seen your website. It is very stylish, right? Right. I personally don't care about that stuff as much, but there's about 50% of the population that are called women that they do, I've noticed. So having five sisters, I know they would actually probably buy your product because it is very stylish.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we put a lot of time into the fashion part. We are a tech company. To
Mm.
make this all happen, we were just focused on the tech, but early on we realized that people don't want to put something ugly on. It has to be as perfect as the technology is. The appearance has to be perfect too.
Yeah. So remind people, when are you going on Kickstarter?
All right, so we are going live on Kickstarter on October 27th. On the first day, we have a huge discount, so be sure to visit our website, quantavici.com, and subscribe so you get notified when we launch, and you're going to be qualified for that huge discount. And our delivery will be as early as December.
You said, wow. So just in time for Christmas.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good. Well, I wish you all the luck in the world. And I actually am going to visit your website and I'm going to look on October 27th because I do get back to that area of the country from time to time.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yep. Thank you again for your time and have a great night.
Thank you. Great talking to you.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.